So I've been wanting to make this video for a while now because I believe it's an interesting discussion to be had, and because a lot of takes I've seen regarding this kind of stuff has made me want to put my own 2 cents into this topic for a video. So I'll start this off with a question. Does power scaling actually matter? And before I really get into my thoughts on this discussion, I want to say right now that I am not a power scaler like at all. Sometimes I'll interact with versus battles discussions and say who I think would win in a fight, and sometimes I'll even get into a friendly little debate with people. But 9 times out of 10, I am not going to look very deep into power scaling analysis when I'm reading or watching something. Like, yeah, I want to know how strong a character is, but I'm not going to go out and make videos like this shit right here. No offense to these content creators either, they're pretty smart and neat guys and they make good content and they know what they're talking about. It's just not something I would really do all that much. I'd rather watch other people's videos and make my own on this kind of topic, but this is an exception. So with that being said, one thing I've noticed over the years is that a lot of people absolutely hate power scalers and even the overall concept of power scaling as a whole. That has to do with both the toxic culture surrounding power scaling discussions, the overall absurdity of how high some series are scaled by their fans, and because of the people that take part in these discussions yeah, I think you get the picture. So this isn't a video to explain why any of these things are necessarily wrong, because a lot of these complaints are valid and even I share some of them. This video is mainly to give my thoughts as to why power scaling is mostly misunderstood by both outsiders to the community and to people within the community. So the first thing that needs to be addressed here is what power scaling exactly is. And while that may seem like an obvious question, I'm going beyond just the literal meaning and also going into what the exact purpose of it is. So obviously power scaling is the method of taking characters from a given story and using their feats within the story to determine just how high they scale in terms of power and where they rank compared to everyone else within their story. This can also go beyond just their own story though, as a big trend is to put 2 characters from different series against one another to see who wins by comparing their overall speed, attack potency, and destructive capabilities. There's an entire community of power scalers, and to say they're passionate about their discussions would be an understatement. People will get into straight up shouting matches over their favorite characters in a versus battle. The biggest debates that have come out of this community go to stuff like Goku versus Superman, Naruto versus Ichigo, or more recently, Naruto versus Luffy. Don't ask me how that one blew out of proportion, I couldn't even begin to tell you myself. The popularity and intensity of power scaling debates have led to a pretty distasteful reputation towards said community for reasons I said prior, and a lot of people would even say that there being such a community for a concept like power scaling is dumb and pointless because power scaling doesn't even matter, quote unquote. And because the authors of these stories don't care about power scaling and don't intend for it to be in their story at all. And while there is somewhat of a point deeply hidden inside of this claim, there is a big misunderstanding in here that makes it impossible to agree with. And that's because of what purpose power scaling actually serves within storytelling. You see, there was once a claim by Stan Lee that's now pretty popular among the community that whoever wins in a fight depends on whoever the author wants to win in a fight, and that's the only factor. That's not the exact words, but that's the basic gist of it. And the reason why I hate when people bring this up is because of the way they use, or more so misuse, this quote to say there's no point in power scaling at all. Because they're absolutely missing the point there. Let me explain. For one, it is true that whoever wins in a fight depends on whoever the author wants to win, but it's obviously so much more than just that. An author could want one character to win in a fight, but if said author presents the character in a way that makes them appear significantly more powerful than the other character, to the point that it makes no sense for them to lose, then you can't just have character A beat character B. Let me put this into perspective. Let's say Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in episode 5. I've presented Darth Vader to be the strongest force of nature within the entire Star Wars world up until this point, while Luke is still a training Jedi who didn't even finish his training. I may want Luke to win, but in this case it makes no sense because Luke literally just doesn't compare to Vader at this point because he's too inexperienced with both the lightsaber and with the Force. If Luke beats Darth Vader in episode 5, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't make sense. Like, even regardless of storytelling stuff like narrative and all that stuff, it just doesn't make sense. It's not realistic. It's too far-fetched. We already know Luke losing was the perfect way to end that duel, but if the way they went with it was that Luke won, it just wouldn't make sense. There was no other possible outcome other than for Vader to win, because that's how they built Darth Vader up. Luke just couldn't live up to that in this movie. This not only plays a big part in the narrative and arcs of Vader and Luke's characters, but it helps the world building of Star Wars by keeping the structure of power that was set in this universe consistent. Does that make sense? If not, let me just make up a scenario then that's far more simple. Let's say I have this villain, alright? Let's say I have Thanos. I've portrayed Thanos to be this big, titan, godlike being that can destroy literal planets. He's already killed all of the Avengers, but then here comes MCU Captain America with his shield and steroids, and the two start to fight. Thanos kills him because he's obviously stronger. Seems fine, right? Alright, but then randomly comes in fucking Robbie Sinclair from the dinosaurs, and he just beats the absolute ever-living shit out of Thanos one-on-one and saves the universe. This would now mean that Robbie Sinclair is not only stronger than Thanos, who can destroy planets, but also stronger than Captain America and the rest of the Avengers that just got fucking obliterated. Doesn't make all too much sense now anymore, right? Yeah, now you see the point here. That's why using this video to dismiss and negate any and all power scaling is super disingenuous. Because while it is up to the author who wins in a fight, you still have to make it believable. Not to mention this logic applies to literally every other aspect of storytelling. Like, let's say a character is killed off, but then later on it's revealed that they were alive the whole time. The author made that decision, but that doesn't make it good or believable because they presented that character as if they were supposed to be dead. This logic applies to anything outside of just characters fighting each other. It applies to everything. So you can't just pick out power scaling and power structure as this exception. Hell, it's not bad if a weaker character beats a stronger character as long as it's believable and makes sense within the story. Whether it's willpower, matchup advantages, or the power of friendship, all of that can work as long as it's within the realm of possibility. Like Enel not being able to beat Luffy because Rubber is less vulnerable to his lightning powers. That makes sense. That works. That's perfectly fine. But then let's go back to my little scenario that I made up. This doesn't work. Robbie Sinclair can't fucking beat Thanos. I mean, it'd be hilarious, but that can't happen and still wouldn't be taken seriously if it did happen. Creating a consistent structure of power within the story that revolves around action and powers is incredibly important to both the characters and to the world. Building up a character to be super strong just to have them lose to someone that's super weak diminishes that entire character and makes the character that beat them feel like a Mary Sue. Developing your power system and staying consistent with it is part of building your world within a story, as it helps you understand just what the world of the story being told is like. A lot of powers tie directly into how a character's personality works and how the world of the series operates. This applies to so many manga series like Hunter x Hunter, One Piece, Jujutsu Kaisen, Dragon Ball, and Bleach, where power plays a role in a lot of different characters and even ties into the central themes of the story, such as Gear 5, Super Saiyan, a lot of different Bankai, and the different Sharingan variations. And when powers are such a big part of your story, being consistent with it is a major need. It may not be as narratively important as a character arc or themes, but it plays a big part in how cohesive the story is. Not being consistent with your power system or how certain characters compare to others can lead to the story being sloppy. It can lead to a character either being way too weak to carry further into the story, or could introduce a character that's so strong that you literally can't convincingly have the main characters beat them, leading into relying on cheap plot twists to help remove said character from the picture. Powers, abilities, and where a character stands compared to others in their world are important no matter how much you want to believe otherwise. So then let's go back to how I originally started this video. The concept of power scaling's purpose is to be a form of analysis. It's in the same vein as analyzing a character's development, analyzing the world of a story, analyzing themes, and everything such as those. While it may not be the most important facet of a story, when your story has a shit ton of fights and powers in it, it's going to matter. How consistent you are able to keep a power structure within your story adds to how well you can tell your story and build your world and characters. And some might say, oh, well, the author didn't have all these power levels and numbers in mind when writing the story, which, I mean, may be true in most cases, but that kind of applies to a whole lot of other stuff people pick up from stories, themes, character traits. A lot of stuff is picked up by the audience without the author's original intention. What an author may try to convey with a scene may come across entirely different to people reading or watching said scene. A lot of messages, symbolism, symbolism, themes, and parallels and foreshadowing that people pick up when reading through a story aren't always added with the intention of having said content. That's part of what analyzing stuff is, which is to look through the content of a story and decide through the content what the story is telling you with its messaging. Some of it is intentional, but some of it isn't. A lot of foreshadowing presented in stories such as One Piece or Hunter x Hunter are more originally unintentional than people realize. So using that as an argument against people who innocently scale characters is just flat out dumb. It doesn't change anything whether it was intentional or not. People are going to draw things from a story that the author didn't originally intend all the time, and that's part of the entire damn point of storytelling, to pick up stuff for yourself and to find your own meaning in something. And that applies to power scaling too. Power scaling is a form of analyzing that can help you find new positives and negatives in a story. It can help you see inconsistencies in the writing with certain characters and the rules the authors set within their own story. It can help you find cracks within the world building or help build it up even more. Keeping a consistent power structure can help to avoid significant power creeps, and power scaling can be used to understand certain aspects of a character or notice said power creeps. While authors aren't always intentionally making every statement and action panel in the series specific to how they want their characters to be scaled, people will interpret it in a way to fit how they believe they stand within the story and compared to others. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, the culture and community around power scaling can be pretty toxic and over the top, but that doesn't negate and dismiss the entire concept. And saying an author or a story sucks because the author quote unquote can't scale is not a valid criticism either, because the authors aren't the ones meant to power scale their stories. They're just meant to keep things consistent. If they don't keep things consistent, then you can criticize the power system. But saying someone can't scale because their story doesn't fit your agenda for a certain character is really childish and stupid, and you should probably never criticize anything again. But conceptually, power scaling is kind of necessary. It does matter, just like any other form of analyzing a story matters. And that's my whole 2 cents on this whole situation and discussion. I don't really like talking about power scaling that much, so this isn't something I'm really going to continue off of or make another follow-up to this to explain more in detail about this stuff. People can do that elsewhere. Anyone else can do that better than me. But I just wanted to give my own 2 cents because I love storytelling, I love writing, I love reading, and I love analyzing stuff. And power scaling is a form of analysis that I respect. I respect power scaling content creators, as long as they're not, total pieces of shit like that one guy. But I respect people who take time out of their day to look in depth on stuff like that, because it is a pretty interesting topic. While the culture around it may be very, very, very tiring, it's still a fairly necessary and respectable thing. And that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I'll see you guys next time. If you guys couldn't tell, I'm super sick right now. So yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Bye bye.